aggressor.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Sip of Cinema, only on SCTV. Wait, what do I say next? This week we're looking at Point Break, a classic from the 90s. Really enjoy going back to some of these films from the 90s. Not all of them hold up, but Point Break certainly does. I think we both enjoyed it immensely. So, welcome to Andrew the Blue Flamer.
Hello, everybody.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that means. It was referenced twice in this movie. I thought it was funny. For like,
Blue Flamer, yeah.
Yeah, Blue Flamer, hotshot punk kids.
Yeah.
Green,
yeah, like
inexperienced, but think they're top shit, I guess.
Yeah, because a blue flame is really hot. So it's hotter than a red or orange flame, I'm assuming, a yellow flame. So there you go. That's a blue flame for you. All right, so this is Sip Cinema, so let's see what we're shipping all. So I got me some Makers 46. So very affordable but high quality Kentucky bourbon. Very good stuff. What do you have?
Got
the
Guinness
old Guinness
extra stout. I must have
Guinness extra stout.
I must have had it on this show previously already, but it's worth another drink.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had the 46 in an earlier episode. But I don't know. I just been feeling like drinking bourbons during the show. For some reason, I don't feel like drinking scotch. I don't know what it is. Maybe like the vanilla sweetness or whatever, but just fits more with the show, I suppose. But anyway, as I said, we're talking about Point Break from '91. So since it's the '90s, as sort of the dawn of the '90s for Point Break, I suppose we were sort of emerging into our teenage years, or at least I was. And so Point Break was sort of this like inflection point between childhood movies and I guess more adult themed movies. But ultimately, I think the reason why we enjoyed it is because it was sort of this action buddy cop type of drama. Even though we didn't really, I suppose we knew who Keanu Reeves was from the Bill and Ted movies. I suppose that's what sort of drew us to this film in the first
Yeah, I
place.
feel like Bill and Ted would have been the first time we were introduced to Keanu. I'm not sure when the first Bill and Ted movie came out, but I'm pretty sure it was before this. It was like 89 maybe?
Yeah. The first film was 89. And then the sequel was actually 91 as well. So depending on the timeline, we may or may not have seen the sequel at the same time, but it doesn't matter because we were already sort of fans of Keanu Reeves because of that movie, basically primarily because of that movie. And then Patrick Swayze, we would have seen in Roadhouse.
Yeah, Roadhouse.
Which is definitely on the list. You may see that very soon, but yeah, so it's a pretty awesome combination of actors for us back in the early '90s, as we'll discuss in more detail. So, what was your impression of Point Break back in the day?
Just remember, it was action-packed, adrenaline junkie surfer movie. That's pretty much what I remember it being, and like watching it again now, it pretty much remains the same.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say it remains the same. I think from the perspective of now, it seemed a lot wilder than I remembered. Like I don't think I understood sort of the crazy, I guess this crazy sort of storytelling elements and the acting choices and the artistic aspects of the film compared to now. Because from now, I'm comparing it to other action movies, especially buddy cop movies, and this is very different to other movies of the same genre. Like it's a surfer. It's basically like the surfer underground surfing world in LA. And I can't think of another buddy cop movie set in the same setting, basically. So
yeah,
everything's so over the top in terms of the dialogue as well, how the characters interact with each other. But that's sort of the first thing I noticed upon rewatching it. But like you said, back in the day, it's just a fun action movie. Yeah, just a fun, wild action movie with some awesome main actors. So nothing much else I remember from that. Although I do, we'll get into it later, but I was sort of, I guess, intimidated by some of the surfer guys in this movie. They seem kind of dangerous.
Yeah. Like War Child and his group that he hangs out with. They're just they're just like animals.
Yeah, they're sort of running wild. Yeah. But yeah, so we'll get into that in more detail as we discuss. But Point Break, released in 1991, directed by Oscar winner Catherine Bigelow, who won the Academy Award for Zero Dark 30. Written by Rick King and Peter Iliff, and starring Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze, and Gary Busey, who is sort of in his middle age. He's sort of the middle-aged, burnt-out cop, kind of like in 48 Hours. What's his name?
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte in 48 Hours. Like he's sort of that archetype.
Yeah.
Sort of the burnt out, foul mouth, middle aged cop, instead of seeing it all, sort of fed up with everything. And he gets this young hotshot partner, Keanu Reeves, Johnny Utah.
Johnny Utah. I
some really excellent casting.
That's a pretty cool name, Johnny Utah.
Yeah. Who came up with that name, Johnny Utah?
Did we Cheers? Utah... I don't know if we Cheers.
I don't think we did Cheers. No, we didn't. Here's to Point Break. A brilliant introduction to 90s filmmaking for teenagers. If you like action, if you like Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, you have to see this film. Here's to Point Break. All right. So it starts off with slow motion images of surfers and surfing. So a pretty common trope in 80s, 90s movies at the start have some slow motion to introduce the context of the film. Like in Top Gun, you got the planes on the aircraft carrier setting the stage, setting the context and the atmosphere. And then we cut to Johnny Utah doing some gun training at the shooting range in Quantico, where he's training to be an FBI agent. And he's really good at shooting. Like, he's pretty awesome. Like, he's a hot shot, but he's top of his class at shooting, basically. To be exact, he's top 2% of his class at Quantico.
And he's doing all these, like, barrel rolls and stuff.
Yeah.
Hot shot moves.
Yeah, lots of very video game moves. But this next bit made me laugh, because it's Bob from Office Space. Like, and he's pretty much playing almost the same character as he does in Office Space. Like, he's just riding Utah's ass the whole time, like just riding everyone's ass. Like, again,
yeah, he plays in Scrubs as well.
Yeah, in Scrubs as well. Yeah,
same stick up his ass doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, another 80s, 90s archetype. The angry cop boss, the cop police captain, but in this case, FBI captain, whatever. Just the guy in charge of law enforcement that sort of angry at the young guys all the time. As we saw in 48 Hours as well. And basically they're just walking through the academy, and Bob's like giving him the rundown of what he expects from new recruits, like no smoking, no sugar, no drinking. And he says that they crunch the data to create analysis to catch the bad guys. And then we get a montage of blindfolded swim training at the academy. And it's at this point that Utah is introduced to his partner, Pappas, which is another interesting name for Gary Busey's character, Pappas. And basically they're just drawing at each other, like, right from the start. Like, there's no hi, nice to meet you. It's like they're just insulting each other, like, right from the jump. So it's pretty funny.
I gotta make the observation of Gary Busey letting himself go, like, for this role.
Yeah.
Only I think Lethal Weapon is 87.
Yeah.
And this is 91, so over 4 years, it's like complete transformation.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. I didn't think of that.
Because I thought he was still relatively young, and like now he's playing a burnt out cop 4 years later. And he looks like he's that age too.
Yeah, so put on a few pounds, similar to Nick Nolte in 48 Hours, just to fit the character, just to create a contrast between Utah and him, because Utah's young, is in incredible shape, and you get the impression that Pappas is probably in the same shape as Utah was back in the day as well. And then we cut to one of my favorite Hollywood tropes is the bank robbery scene at the start of a movie, or the heist scene at the start of a movie. Like, it just sets the tone for the rest of the film. Like Dark Knight from 2008, we had that legendary Joker bank robbery scene. Like, after you see that at the start of the Dark Knight, you can't not watch the rest of the movie. So that's why, bank robbery scenes are so important. Heat as well, from the mid 90s, 95.
We probably should do Heat too.
Yeah, that legendary bank robbery scene. So bank robbery scenes are always pretty awesome. But you can't just put it in any movie. It has to make sense. So let's check out this one.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
Now, get down!
What's the matter with you people?
You, out of the cubicle!
Get out of my way! Now back away from the counter and get your fucking hands up!
Just implementing our own personal plan of deregulation, Mr. President. Oh, Ron.
I got Nancy on the line.
I'm good.
80! Air Force One is waiting, Mr. President!
Let's go, let's go, let's go!
Yeah, I like how they do impressions of
Impersonation,
their president
That's
in the
fun.
middle of a heist. Like, that's amazing. So pretty incredible bank robberies. Pretty simple and straightforward compared to The Dark Knight or Heat, because Bodhi's philosophy for bank robbery is 90 seconds in and out. It's very simple, very straightforward. That's why he's never been caught. Like, he's done like 27 bank jobs in the past 3 years. No one's been shot, no one's been caught. So they build up this mythology surrounding Bodhi's bank robbery crew. And so they dressed up as 4 presidents. So Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Lyndon Johnson, and Jimmy Carter. And at the end, as they're leaving, Lyndon Johnson's character, he moons the bank with a thank you message on his ass. This is pretty funny. Like, mooning was a pretty popular thing back in the 90s, from what I remember.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it was more like a surfer or a skater kind of thing to do.
Yeah, it's like
Like
if you're part of
it's
the
like a
underground.
rebellious, underground
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, it's funny thinking of that because 90s, a lot of people mooned. That's where the term comes from. And so the reason why they've never been caught is because they stick to the cash drawers and never hit the vault. And so that becomes a big deal later on. And so the feds are investigating, and Utah, he volunteers to have a look at the getaway car. To do some investigation, but like, he's really eager to catch them, but Pappas is like, whatever, you can't really be bothered trying to catch them. And then Utah sort of challenges his manhood, and sort of wants to get Pappas to tell him his theory about these guys, because Utah gets the impression that Pappas knows something about what these guys are up to, like how they get away with their crimes so much. But Pappas isn't like saying anything because for some reason he's not sort of forthcoming or really willing to stick his neck out to catch them.
But
eventually
like
Pappas,
he had his own idea that there were surfers and stuff, and he just got laughed at like previously. So
exactly.
So he's kind of withdrawn from really trying to catch them.
Yeah, because I don't think he's really respected in the at the agency, for various reasons. But basically, Pepper says, there was evidence of wax found at the scene, which is similar to the wax used by surfers. And so they go back to the precinct and they're drinking Corona beer on the job. And they reveal that the robberies are basically just a summer job. The Bodhi only robs during the summertime. And we get another view of a 90s police precinct, in this case, the federal agency precinct. I mean, there's not much difference really, except there's no uniform cops running around, but the office space is basically the same as Lethal Weapon, or 48 Hours, just minus the police, the police officers in uniform. It's people running around. It's like 40,000 people in this small room, and everyone's like sweating and drinking coffee or yelling or cursing someone out. So it's very 90s. And so we cut to Utah. Utah and Pappas are at the surfing store, and Utah is getting a hard time from the kid at the surfing store because, and then Pappas gets a bride. Yeah,
the kid was like, a lot of guys your age are getting into surfing. And then Utah's like, I'm 25.
yeah,
The kid like just talks to him. He's just acting like like he's an experienced adult already, but meanwhile he's like 12 years old or something.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah, there's some really funny moments throughout the movie. And so Peppers gets the bright idea that Utah should infiltrate the surfer group. Just like infiltrate them, become their friends, trying to, find out information. Become Donnie Brasco in the cinema, in the surfer scene. But the problem is that Utah's never surfed before, and so he needs some surfing lessons. And so Utah's like out there on the surf. He's like surfing around. He's getting destroyed by the waves. Doesn't get punched, or is that later?
No, it's later.
That was later, wasn't it?
Punched by the waves.
Yeah, he gets beat up by the waves, but he goes under the ocean, but he's saved by this girl. This very masculine woman named Tyler. And she's like yelling at him, like she's cursing him out, saying his board sucks.
She was like nice, like saving him and pulling him out, and like, you okay? Like he's coughing, and then as soon as he's like back there, she's like, what are you trying to do? Kill yourself?
Yeah.
And then he just cusses him out and storms off.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way characters interact in this movie. Like they just go from 0 to 100 very quickly, even if they're complete strangers. But I sort of like the dynamic between Tyler and Utah in this movie. It sort of goes through different trajectories in terms of the emotions that exist between them. Especially when she pulls a gun at him, which we'll get to later. And so later on, Utah is like, he's thinking to himself, maybe I should get this chick to teach me to surf. And so he secretly like gets her number plate. So he can like look her up and like use her as a surfing contact for the group. And so back at the bureau, he finds out who she is, where she works, etc. And so the next day he goes to visit her at her diner. And she thinks he's hitting on her. And she sort of rejects him initially, but then he sort of makes up this bullshit story about his parents dying.
But 2 years ago, they were killed in the car wreck. You can't imagine it. Your whole life changes. And I suddenly realized that all my goals had been their goals, and I hadn't been living my own life. I want to do what you do. It's the truth.
He's such a bullshit artist. Like, why would you lie about that? Like, you might say it's a bit of a scumbag for doing that, but I think that's just part of
No,
the
it was
style
yeah.
of the movie.
No, it was so when he got her number plate details, he looked her up. He saw that. No, he saw that both her parents died in some kind
Yeah,
of incident.
yeah, I should have mentioned that actually. Yeah.
And so so he was using that as an in for her to kind of allow her. I mean, so that she would be okay with like teaching him how to surf. So she got sucked in basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Utah using his charisma, and his puppy dog eyes, Keanu Reeves' puppy dog eyes to get her to teach him how to surf. And so we get a nice surfing training montage, and there's people laughing at him basically. And we get a cool, like, it's basically very, very 90s in terms of the music and the style of the montage. It's almost like a music video. And at the end of the montage, we see Bodhi, or Utah sees Bodhi, and he's really good at surfing. So Bodhi, played by Patrick Swayze. And Bodhi comes with a lot of mythology and background. Like, people just talk about him like he's this mythological character. And they say he's searching for the ultimate ride. And we'll talk about the 50-year storm later on. And then Tyler is basically Bodhi's girl. But we learn that, you know, if you're Bodhi's girl, either it's very, very temporary or it's not, you know, really a formal arrangement. Like, Bodhi just sort of moves through life at his own pace. And I think the girls sort of attach themselves to him and sort of move off sort of in this sort of unusual way. It's sort of just part of this surfer lifestyle. So when Tyler's Bodhi's girls, you know, there's just temporary. And so because Utah infiltrated the group with Tyler, later that night they're on the beach with Bodhi and the other beach bums in his crew. They're throwing around some footballs at night with, you know, all the other surfer hooligans. And it's a really rough game. Sort of running around on the sand, just knocking each other out, like beating each other basically. And then the last play of the game, Johnny Utah, he sort of tackles Bodhi into the ocean. And then everybody runs up like, "Hey, bro, that's not cool, bro. What are you doing? You're out of line, bro." You know, they get really surfer bro when they run up to him. So, "Dude, what are you doing, dude?" You know. And then Bodhi's like, "No, relax. Like, Utah used to play for Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Like, that's
Buckeyes.
Utah's, like, yeah." The Buckeyes, yeah. That's Utah's claim to fame, is he played in the Rose Bowl.
Number 9.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how
going on by itself. Yeah.
How so Johnny Utah, he used to be the jock of his high school or university, and he's supposed to become like get drafted, I guess, eventually. But he turned out to be like a lawyer. It's kind of unusual that he would go down that path. Like, especially in that day and age, like being a jock and going into law is like, you wouldn't have that mental capacity to do that. They're not really known to be educated, like being able to be educated to that level, I guess.
Yeah, but It's only because he got really badly injured. His knee got really badly injured. And so he couldn't really continue playing to the same level as he used to. But yeah, and so we have Johnny Utah, the surfing lawyer, these days, federal agent, special agent Utah. And so back at the agency, this is a hilarious scene. So we have Bob behind his desk, and then Utah holding a surfboard with Pappas next to him. Well, I think it was in a Hawaiian shirt, maybe. Just looking ridiculous, and Bob's like yelling at them because got nothing from the investigation after 2 weeks. So they're just getting chewed out.
Yeah, there was like 2 more robberies in that time.
Yeah, there's 2 more. And they're doing nothing, and they're just surfing and meeting chicks. Basically, that's about it. And then Johnny Utah figures they can get a hair sample from the beach, and they match the chemicals in the hair to the chemicals at the beach. So I don't know if that's realistic in terms of forensic science back in the early 90s, but that's what they do. And so the next day, Pappas is running around the beach, like basically snipping people's hair.
Like there's,
Like
there's two guys underneath the towel.
Yeah, the
smoking.
stoners. Yeah,
Like, you can see the smoke rising from the towel.
yeah.
So, he comes and
Yes.
takes a hair sample, like his girlfriend's making a wig or something.
But he pulls out the guy's hair. He's like pretending to save his life. He's like, hold still, hold still. And he pulls his hair.
Johnny.
And then that forensic science actually works. So they nail down the specific beach where these guys hang out. So Utah's out in the surf again, and this is the time where he gets punched. So he's sort of surfing, but he cuts off another guy who's surfing. And so they both end up in the ocean, and this guy comes out and it's like just punches him right in the face. And then someone yells, "Go back to the valley, man." and then this is one of my favorite scenes when Utah's taking a shower outdoors, and then he gets jumped by the four animals.
This the guy? Yeah.
This is where you tell me all about how locals rule and yuppie insects like me shouldn't be surfing the break and all that, right?
Nope. That would be a waste of time.
We're just gonna fuck you up.
I love that scene so much. It's like it just focuses on each guy's face, and then the last guy, Fender from Cyborg, and then of course
Fender.
the little guy with the dreads, Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, of course. But those guys look really wild. Like as I was saying at the start, like they look really intimidating and really wild. Like as a kid watching that, like I was really scared for Johnny Utah back in the day. But yeah, so basically, like they promised, they beat his ass. But like Johnny, gets a few hits in because he's got a surfboard. He like knocks a few guys with the surfboard, and then Bodie runs up, and sort of saves Utah. Like, stay, stop it. But then the guys like still want to fight, so they fight Bodie and Utah at the same time. And then Bodie like starts doing karate, which is like I think a Patrick Swayze thing, right?
Yeah, Patrick Swayze, he knew martial arts.
Yeah. So Swayze did karate in Roadhouse as well. So it's a thing with him. It's sort of a Swayze.
But he didn't
fighting
tear
style.
out any throats in this movie.
No. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about Roadhouse. Yeah, so like you mentioned before, that sort of wild animals, these guys, like we see him like go back to whatever house they're living in. Like they're just like all piled onto this Jeep Wrangler,
And the Jeep
open
is
top
just,
Jeep Wrangler.
and they're just like zipping in and out of traffic. And when they pull in
Yeah.
into the house, they don't pull into the driveway. They just they just climb the curb and just drive into
Mm.
the front, like into the lawn, the front lawn.
Yeah. But that's also a very 90s thing. Like this lack of social boundaries. But like a part of this movie that I was thinking of as I was watching it was sort of the property prices, which is sort of a weird thing to think about, but
Property prices.
like LA now, the property prices, like that house that those lunatics were going to, that would be like well over $1 million these days. And the Bodie's party house, that'll be like 5 million, 7 million easily. That gigantic, like multi-story house on the beach. Like there was some prime real estate back then.
It's probably
They're
like
just like,
probably close to like 10 million now
yeah, probably 10,
in the
yeah.
States.
Because it'd be done up really nice right on the beach, yeah. But they were just like living this free lifestyle on the beach. Like there's not much to like. I think that's why Bodie was robbing banks, because he didn't want to work. So he can like rob the bank in summertime and live the rest of the year off like what he stole. Just like riding the waves and like being cool, man, and
Well, he didn't want to be part of the system.
no part of this. Yeah, we're gonna get to that speech. Because he doesn't want it yet. Like he doesn't like, he wants to show people that
Yeah,
you
he
don't
doesn't want to
need to be part
conform
of the
to
system.
societal standards, and
Yeah.
he can be free and not not a sheep, I guess, or yeah.
Yeah. Don't be part of the matrix, basically. If he was around these days. Like we hear these days. Like don't give in to the matrix.
Don't take the blue pill.
Don't take the blue pill. And so Birdie's talking about how like, oh wait, let me say this first. And so they beat up the guys, okay, and Birdie and Utah are having a discussion. Birdie's like, those guys that only live to get radical. They don't get the spiritual side of the sea. So Birdie's like this sea hippie, and those guys are just wild. They're probably doing drugs, drinking, and stuff like that. As we see later on with the FBI raid. Birdie's like, riding waves is like a place where you go in your mind. It's not just a thing you do with your body. And so Birdie's like invites Utah to this party later that night. And so before then, Utah and Pappas have to stake out this house with the four guys. And then again, another like funny archetype of 90s movies, 90s cop movies, is the rival partner, the rival two partners of the main partners. So then they hate each other, and so the rival partners show up. And the Pappas has some cold pizza for them. But having stopped,
They get the late shift, like the overnight shift of the stakeout.
yeah. But that type of thing is like, it's not complicated. It doesn't drag down the story, but it adds a lot of humor and character development. So, but you don't really see that in many movies, other than like buddy cop movies from the 80s and 90s. But and so we get to Bodie's party. So like I said, it's in this gigantic house on the beach. And there's a bunch of like weird hippie stuff happening, and they got Jimi Hendrix playing. But there's like hundreds of people in this house, and they're all hippies. They're like high as hell. And Bodie's got another girl. And And you'll recognize this. It's the chick from RoboCop 2, the black chick from RoboCop 2, who's like takes the nuke.
Yeah. You look at it.
Like she and the little kid from RoboCop 2, they were like they were like drug dealers, whatever. Yeah, we have to do RoboCop 2. Now that I mention it,
Yeah, we have to
like,
do
the first sequel in our series in the show.
Actually, it would be, if you count Terminator 2, we just started with that sequel. Or do you mean?
But I mean, like 1 then 2.
Yep.
Like the first pair of French movies from the same franchise.
Yeah.
And the Bodhi's like, make yourself at home, Johnny Utah. And then outside they got a campfire going. I shouldn't say campfire, a bonfire, because it's on the beach. And there's a bunch of surfer dudes, just chill out, man. And then Bodhi starts talking about the 50-year storm, which is really interesting. And this year it's at Bell's
Kind
Beach.
of a legend.
No, it's real. It's absolutely real. Everything moves in cycles. So twice a century, the ocean lets us know just how small we really are. A winter storm comes out of Antarctica, tearing up the Pacific. And it sends a huge swell north 2,000 miles. And when it hits Bell's Beach, it'll turn into the biggest surf this planet has ever seen, and I will be there.
Yeah, there's a lot of Coronas being drunk in this movie. But no Coronas in lime. I don't think that was invented yet. But you can hear Bodhi talk about the 50-year storm. So this very legendary goal of Bodhi to surf. But you get the impression that his life is leading towards surfing the greatest wave of all time. And I think he comes to realize that he may or may not actually survive surfing that, but spiritually he wants to sort of experience that. And if he goes out or dies, then that's appropriate because he's doing what he's spiritually connected to. And that's something that's explored at the end of the movie, as Bodhi is about to be arrested. But and during this speech, he even says, it's not tragic to die doing what you love. And so you get the impression Bodhi doesn't really have a death wish. It's more about the spiritual connection to the ocean, and sort of that the ocean's bigger than him, and to be enveloped by the bosom of the ocean at the end of his life would be something that would be appropriate, not tragic. And then Tyler, Utah's girl, she tells Utah that he has a kamikaze look. So he's sort of this wild guy. Like, she gets the impression that he's a bit wild, off the chain. But
I think that's what draws Bodhi to Utah as well, because he kind of sees that in himself, and he might share that kind of quality with Utah. So I think that's what draws Bodhi to Utah initially, and I think throughout the movie as well too.
Yeah. Exactly. There's more similarities between Bodhi and Utah than differences, probably. And so later that night, Bodhi comes out ready to surf and is like, let's go to stealth mission. And so stealth mission just means they go surfing in the dark. And Bodhi's like, dude, you got to accept what the wave is giving you. Because you don't need to see, just go with the waves, basically. And so Utah catches a wave with Bodhi. And then later on, he stays in the ocean with Tyler. And they sort of get to know each other a little better on the beach overnight. And then Utah wakes up later the next morning, but he's late. He's sort of on the beach with Tyler the next morning. It's very, dramatic. He sort of wakes up late. He looks at his watch. It's like, oh, I got to get in the office. But it's not just late for the office. He's late for a raid. So actually raiding these guys' house. The wild guys from
The
when he got beaten up.
animal house.
Yeah. And then like all the feds are like hiding around the house. And so Pappas, he like walks around, like he walks up to the house, pretends to be looking for a dog. And we see a guy that morning in the house that like pours a bowl of Cheerios and then puts in beer instead of milk. Which is exactly what you would expect.
breakfast of champions.
And I think one of the guys actually notices the feds outside, and they start pulling out their guns, start locking and loading, ready for the feds to bust down the door. And so they're trying to communicate with Johnny Utah, but he can't hear because there's a lawnmower going next door. And then basically Pappas just barges in, and then all hell breaks loose.
Something's going down, man. This ain't right. Shut the fuck out, man. It's nothing. Will you shut the fuck up? Check the windows, bro. Do it. FBI, gorgeous. FBI, drop it! Fuck you! Oh, wait! Hey!
Oh, shut up! You motherfucker!
I just love this script so much.
Fuck you.
And I want to talk about Tom Sizemore because I didn't know who Tom Sizemore is back in 91, but now I saw him in this movie. I was like, wait, that's Tom Sizemore. And so, don't just use Tom Sizemore in like a nothing role of some bad guy. Like, he's actually an undercover agent. Agent Dietz. Like, he's been on. I can't remember. I don't know if I wrote down how long he was undercover for, but basically, he's trying to bust this meth operation in the area as Agent Dietz. He's like infiltrated this gang. But then Utah's raid just messed everything up. But
I don't remember
I'm
seeing him as like any younger. Like, what role did he play like before this role, or have we only seen him when he was older?
Yeah, I think just older. I think. Are you trying to say that he sort of looks the same? Like,
No, he
throughout.
looks like noticeably younger, but I don't remember seeing him that young before. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen him when he's like older than that.
Oh, older.
Yeah.
Like much older.
Like, I feel like the first time I can remember seeing him was Enemy of the State
Oh, yeah.
with Will Smith and Jackman. Jackman?
Yeah, Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman. Jackman.
They combined
I was
the
like,
two.
I'm going to say Hugh Jackman. No, I was like, Hugh Jackman.
No, I always remember Tom Sizemore from Heat.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the other actors from that film. It's like crazy list of actors. But yeah, he was an Enemy of the State. But yeah, it just seems like he was in way more movies.
Yeah, to play
just
such
looking through.
a bit role, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, it says he was in Passenger 57.
Oh, yeah. That's right. He's like the comic relief in there, like a humorous. He had that funny surname.
Funny surname.
He had this weird surname.
Del Vecchio.
Yeah, Del
It
Vecchio.
was Sly Del Vecchio.
And
Um,
Wesley Snipes, he couldn't pronounce it. He just said, they'll fuck you or something.
Oh, that's another movie you have to do. 57.
Yeah, Passenger 57.
Always bet on black.
Always bet on black.
So I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. Because first of all, a naked chick jumps on Utah's back and starts beating him up. Anthony Kiedis gets shot in the foot.
Shoots himself in the foot.
Yeah, shoots himself in the foot.
The door opens on him and he's pointing his gun down. He's like, ah! He's just screaming the whole time.
He's screaming. And then the naked chick stabs one of the agents in the back as well.
Yeah, that was bad. She got this kitchen knife and just stabbing him in the back.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, this scene.
Yeah, it was really
and
messy.
then Utah goes out the window with Fender from Cyborg. And then Fender tries to shred Utah's face with the lawnmower. But then Pappas saves him. And that's when Tom Sizemore shows up as Dietz. And he gets busted. It's funny in that clip that we just played, where they drag him to the ground. The Asian almost hits his head on the countertop. Like he has to do this.
I feel like it wasn't part of the proper take. It's like a tackle that almost busted his teeth on the counter.
And so Asian Dietz is super angry, just yelling at them, swearing at them, like he just messed up, my undercover job. And then later on, Utah and Pappas realize that these guys aren't the bank robbers. Like there might be a bunch of meth dealers, but they're not the bank robbers. And they're going after the wrong guys the whole time. The next morning, Bodhi knocks on Utah's door to serve some quote 5-foot walls. And then at the beach, Utah sort of realizes that it's actually Bodhi's guys that are the bank robbers. And Utah gets a feeling that they're going to rob a particular bank the next day because they were talking about they're going to leave town very soon. And so Utah gets an idea of which bank it's going to be. And so the next morning, him and Pappas are sort of waiting, on the street in their car, watching the bank. But like with every buddy cop movie, when they're staking out a place, they have to eat. And so Pappas wants 2 meatball sandwiches, 2.
And then he says, you should have got 3 of them. Like when Johnny comes back with everything, he's like, he wants to eat the ass end of a rhino.
Yeah.
And then he said, man, I should have got 3 of these. Meanwhile, he's making the blunder of stakeout, missing that the Lincoln pulled out.
Yeah, they're not looking at the bank. They're just worried about the food. And as Utah's ordering, we see in the background the robbers' car pull up and the 4 presidents get out. So Utah doesn't see this at all. And so Utah later on, soon after that, sees them coming out the bank and shoots at them as they're driving away. And so we get an old-fashioned 90s car chase. And so the robbers' tires eventually get shredded. And so Utah and Pappas have to chase them on foot. And the robbers, they jack a Chevy and they burn their Lincoln along the way. And that gives them enough time for Utah and Pappas to catch up to them around the petrol station, I think, right?
Yep.
They're at a petrol station. And then the Ronald Reagan robber is on fire as he runs away from Utah. And then we get a foot chase between Bodhi and...
This is my all-time favorite foot chase in all movies.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's got one of the best endings as well, which we'll talk about. Yeah, at the very, very end of that, Utah starts shooting indiscriminately into the air, which is
Yeah, and
extremely
screaming.
dangerous to do. Like, you're not supposed to do that because the bullets eventually come down. They have to go somewhere. But we saw just a small glimpse of that foot chase, which actually takes at least 5 minutes. And then ends with them sort of going into the LA basin. With John. So if we can break down the different ways, different techniques of scaling that wall. And so Bodhi, he sort of knows, I think he's jumped that before. So he goes down, he sort of has the correct posture. Like he knows how high it is and he sort of gets away with it. And so Utah comes in, he sort of rolls into it. He doesn't see the ground. He sort of just flies over the edge and sort of lands awkwardly with his sort of body facing the wall, which is not what you want. Because you can't roll at that point. Like if it was front on, like if you got off the wall forward, you could actually roll forward and avoid injuring his knee. Well, I think we're supposed to get the impression that that's the knee that he injured in college, and so
Yeah, that's
not very
the
strong.
the bum knee.
The bum knee.
At the same time, he could have landed most of his weight on his other leg and rolled the other direction. But I guess in the situation, sweat is flying and heart's pounding and it's not thinking. And that's the way that they decided to progress the movie with Johnny Utah, old sports injury coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, the movie did a good job sort of setting up different things and then it paying off later on. I think it did a really good job doing that. And the foot chase, we can't mention the foot chase without the dog. So Bodhi throws a dog at Utah.
And then Keanu like kicks it away, and like it yelps, yelp.
He literally like throws the dog.
This-
They just came up with some wild stuff in this movie.
yeah, it's like they'll run through people's houses, and like there's one lady with a broom just starts beating on Johnny Utah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, she doesn't
he
run.
comes
She's
in.
like starts beating.
And is that the house where he just breaks through the window
Yeah.
and like he breaks through the window and falls on the ground, and then she just comes and starts bashing him.
Yeah.
No, that was
And so
cool.
later
Well
on,
shot.
yeah, well shot. Yeah, yeah, this is a very expertly made film. I think this is back at the precinct or at the agency, but Peppers tells Utah, when you shoot, you don't miss. But in this case, actually, we should talk about. Actually, before we move on, let's talk about the ending of the chase. So we saw at the end of the clip Utah staring into Bodhi's eyes, but the dramatic irony or the tension within this scene is that Utah doesn't know it's Bodhi, but Bodhi knows it's Utah, right? And so the dynamic shifts between these two characters for the rest of the movie, because for the next few scenes, Bodhi knows Utah is an agent, but is still treating him a certain way to lead him on.
But I feel like Johnny must know, because he already suspected they're the group. They're going to do something tomorrow, and like that's why they were staking out the bank. So it's high probability that it is like Bodhi's group, and I feel like he must have had some idea that this was Bodhi that he was chasing, though. At the same time,
Yeah, you reckon?
that's what I feel. Yeah, because I feel like that's the reason why he didn't pull the trigger, because he knew it's Bodhi.
Actually, you're probably right.
And that's why he was upset, and he's like screaming, shooting into the air, because he knew it's him and he can't do it. Oh, that's
the other theory.
What I think.
The other theory would be that he's not confident in his shot, but that doesn't really make sense And so the only option you have is that he didn't want to shoot Bodhi.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a possibility. I think that's why they sort of focused in on Bodhi's eyes at the end of that scene, just to take away the mask. Because you get the impression that Utah's probably staring into his eyes, and sort of knows intuitively that it's probably Bodhi. And so during this discussion of the Pappas is also worried that Utah might be getting too close to Bodhi, they're becoming too much friends. And so later on, when Utah meets with Tyler, she's like patching him up, and he lies again. He says he was in a hit and run accident. And then Tyler, you get the impression Tyler knows that, he's hiding something. And then back with Bodhi and his crew, they're like freaking out. They're like, "Oh, we got to kill Utah, dude. We knew he was a Fed, blah blah blah." And then we get the speech, Bodhi's speech.
This was never about money for us. It was about us against the system. That system that kills the human spirit. We stand for something. To those dead souls inching along the freeways in their metal coffins, we show them that the human spirit is still alive.
Yeah. And so Bodhi is a very charismatic leader. He's not just some cold-blooded bad guy at this stage of the movie. But we'll get to that later. But he just seems to be, going with the flow. He sort of wants to just do what he wants to do and sort of live in harmony with the universe in a way. And he does that through surfing. But at the same time, he sort of robs. It's sort of like this Robin Hood character. He sort of robs from the rich and sort of gives to his friends. And so we cut back to Utah and Tyler. And this is a very good scene as well. Because Tyler found his wallet and his federal agency identification. And so she's really pissed off. She's got a gun, like she's pointing the gun at him, like she shoots his pillow. She's freaking out, calling him a liar, like waving the gun around. And then she's like freaked out because she realizes that he probably lied about his parents dying in a car accident. And then she's like, "Don't you have a soul?" And she like leaves, but he tries to run after her, but he can't walk because of his knee and he's naked. I don't know why he needed to be naked, but he was. And he pretends to be speaking to Tyler on the phone later on, as practice for leaving her a message. So as if he's some sort of teenager who's like practicing what he's going to say on the phone to Tyler, as a way of apology. But then soon after that, Bodhi's at the door. And he sort of rushes Utah out the door. Like, so come on, let's go.
Yeah, there's like no mention of the bank robbery or the chase or anything like that. So you're kind of awkward as a viewer because like something has to happen and they're just not drawing any attention to it.
Exactly. So there's a dramatic tension because of that. And so Bodhi's going to take Utah skydiving. And so as a viewer, you're like, is he going to take Utah skydiving and there's going to be some sort of accident, where Utah's parachute won't open or something? But, and then Utah's like, "Oh, but my knee, like I can't land or whatever." He's like, "Don't worry, we're not going to land on land." And then as we're about to jump, everyone starts swapping shoots because Utah doesn't trust like which shoot works or doesn't work. And so
Yeah, like
they're
who
just playing
packed this
Poppy
shoot?
yeah. And so this is another great scene, well filmed scene in this film. In this movie is the skydiving scene. It's like they actually got the camera person to skydive with everybody. And so you get this really dramatic and energetic movement of skydiving within the scene. It's very, very authentic because they're actually skydiving as they're filming, which seems impossible, but they pulled it off, and it looks really amazing.
It's a really sick scene.
Mm.
Keep coming! Killer Speedster!
Yeah, pretty amazing scene. It's probably a compilation of different shots that they did, like a bunch of different shots they put together, but it just looks really dramatic and seamless. And you really get the feeling of height, like how high they were, and the danger that they were in terms of skydiving, especially with the Utah. And so we saw at the end of that clip the sort of joint arms and then like fly down together. And as a viewer, you're like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? They're like treating him like he's a close friend now, even though they know he's an agent. So it's sort of an
It was
interesting
funny.
moment.
It was funny just before Johnny Utah and Bodhi pull their shoots. It's like Utah was like, pull your shoot first, and then he's like, no, you pull your shoot first. So they do have like this kind of competitiveness with each other as well.
Yeah.
Do you think Bodhi's trying to get Utah to defect?
Become a bad guy. Yeah, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
reckon
that's what I felt, because he gave him lots of opportunities, and like killing him would have been probably easy for them to do, but it's just not part of Bodhi's nature, I guess.
Yeah, he wasn't a murderer until at the end of the film. And so Bodhi ends up pulling Utah's ripcord, and so they land in the water, and they're back on land and they're putting away the chutes, but then Bodhi sort of calls Utah over here. Come here, I've got to show you something. And then he brings Utah into the van, and he's got a video of Tyler being held hostage. And so like Bodhi's saying, like Rosie's got this guy named Rosie. He's got Tyler, and he's going to gut her like a pig unless they get where they need to be. And so Utah obviously is pissed. He puts Bodhi up against the wall, starts choking him, but he can't beat him up because he's got to rescue Tyler. And so on their way to the destination, all the guys Utah sees, they're all like putting on bulletproof vests. And the Bodhi starts giving a pep talk, like, don't show fear because fear causes hesitation. Project strength to avoid conflict. And then he gives Johnny Utah an empty shotgun for the bank robbery. And the Bodhi's like, dude, I want to exist on a different plane. And then he talks about the 90 seconds door to door. Unfortunately, they only have 4 president masks, so Johnny has to go in without a mask.
He doesn't get to be president.
Yeah, he doesn't get to be. You don't get to be president, Johnny. So they hit the bank. They rush in. get on the ground, that type of thing. And Johnny Utah sort of joining in the best way he can with an empty shotgun. But it's actually doing pretty good, because he's a federal agent, he's probably been in these situations before, he can pretend to be a bank robber one time. And so time's ticking along. And, Utah and the guys, they expect they're going to be finished soon. But then Bodhi's like, no, but this time we're hitting the vault. They're like, dude, no, we don't hit the vault. And then it's like, no, we're going to hit the vault. And then I like how this time, like, everyone's on the ground, but then on the ground also is this hotshot cop. Like, this hero cop on the ground is going to, like, take out the bad guys.
Yeah, it's just a cop in street clothes, like off-duty cop,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, off-duty cop. Yeah,
And
he's strapped up.
packing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's about to blast someone.
Yeah.
Federal agent undercover!
Yeah, I love the ending to that scene, but we'll talk about some of the details of that scene. But like at the end with the camera like panning around Johnny's face, like it's such a 90s thing, but a really dramatic ending to the scene. But so we'll talk about the bank robbery. So first of all, that super cop, I don't know what he thought he was going to do. Like, if he shoots Bodhi in the chest, the other guys will just shoot him anyway. Like, he's got no body armor. He's got no backup. Like, it's 1v5 basically.
Well, it started off like, so he shoots Bodhi, so that's one down, and then he turns around and shoots Utah. That's 2 out of 5. And I feel like if the security guard hits somebody, then it's 2 and 2. So
Yeah,
they had a
if the
chance.
security guard got up right away, like with the other guy, and if he wasn't like 45% body fat, then they could like stand side by side and start blasting the bank robbers. But the security guard is pretty useless. like no athleticism at all.
Yeah, I guess it's just a hot truck cop for some glory.
Yeah.
But it would have been, yeah, retrospect, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, I guess to be fair, he probably didn't know Bodhi had a bulletproof vest on.
Man,
but,
Bodhi packing that cannon
hmm.
just blew that cop away.
Yeah, he just draws
slide it.
down slowly, boom, right in the chest. And so the blonde guy, he gets shot in the neck, and the bulletproof vest didn't help him, and so he dies in Bodhi's arms. And Bodhi's like shocked, like, "Whoa, I can't believe one of my friends is dying." And then at the end of the scene, as we saw, Bodhi knocks out Utah as he's leaving the bank. And then Utah, this is another funny scene. Like, the rival Asians show up and start arresting Johnny Utah.
Reading him his rights.
Reading him his rights. But Bob is there as well. Like, he's pissed off. He's saying, "Oh, Johnny Utah, you're an accessory to murder." And then Pappas and Bob, they have an argument about that, and then Pappas just knocks him out. Because he doesn't have respect, because Bob doesn't have respect for his elders, and so Pappas just decks him.
Yeah, Bob just went down like cold.
Straight down. Yeah, I should say, in this movie, his name is Harvey, but I'm calling him Bob.
It's Harp. Harp was the surname.
Oh, Harp. Sorry.
Yeah.
Harp. Yeah. I thought it was Harp. Yeah. Probably short for Harper or something, but yeah. And so Pappas, he takes Utah in his car, and takes off his handcuffs, and they drive out to the Santa Monica airport because that's where the bad guys are going. And so Utah's plan is to show up unarmed, like wave his arms in the air, say, I'm here in peace. I just want to know where Tyler is. But little do they know that Pappas is like creeping around. And so Pappas is like spying on them from afar. But then the third guy, he went to the bathroom, and so he comes out and he sees Pappas. And so he gets a jump on Pappas because he's coming off from behind. And so this is the tragic moment where Pappas actually gets shot dead. But as he gets shot, he sort of shoots the other guy at the same time. But he doesn't get shot yet. Like the other guy comes out, tries to shoot him, misses, and then Pappas gets the shot in and then kills him. And then there's a shootout. The surfer guys are really bad at shooting, but Pappas he's a professional, so he's a really good shooter. But the problem is the third guy that he shot before isn't dead, and so the other guy, the third guy, he comes back to life and shoots Pappas in the back twice.
The shotgun.
Shotgun, yeah. Because Pappas was about to shoot Bodhi, right? And so Utah's like, no, don't shoot him. And Pappas is like, get out the way, let me shoot him. And then during that standoff, Pappas gets shot and he's dead. So interestingly, you don't have that typical scene where the main character sort of weeps over his friend's death. It's sort of the movie sort of moves on very quickly after Pappas dies, which is a bit unusual considering he was sort of one of the main characters of the movie. But basically, the plane's got to take off. Bodhi gets Utah on the plane as the cops show up. And one of the other guys is really, really injured. He's on the plane as well. You can tell he's about to die. The guy's talking about, he's really, really cold. It's like bleeding out. And so Utah tells Bodhi to let Tyler go, like tell Rosie to let Tyler go. But Bodhi's like, no. And so he sort of Bodhi puts like a parachute on the dead guy. Or basically Roach, I should say Roach. Roach is bleeding out. And he puts the parachute on him and like pushes him out the plane. So I don't know if he's supposed to survive or what, and so he pushes Roach out, and then Bodhi jumps out afterwards. But
not this time. Adios, amigo. Fuck yeah! You're gonna die, Johnny. 6 seconds. You're gonna be meat waffles. 5, 4. You fucking crazy. 3. Pull it.
Yeah, really crazy scene. We're gonna be in 6 seconds. We're gonna be meat waffles. Yeah, it's such a great script.
It's
overall.
such a Hollywood movie. Jumping out the plane
Yeah.
without a parachute, with a gun.
With a gun. Yeah.
Just dive bombing straight down.
Dive
Crazy.
bomb straight into him. But then eventually, Utah has to drop the gun and then pull the chute, and so they sort of crash land.
I feel like Bodhi throwing that gun down on the side. It's kind of like egging him on to come after me.
Yeah. Oh, my stream just got taken down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think too many 30-second clips. um. Anyway, we'll finish it off. And so, yeah, as I was saying, so Utah eventually has to pull the chute himself, and it's a hard landing. And we said the other guy like land, the roach land, but he's dead,
Mm.
obviously. Even though his chute was pulled, so he probably lived long enough to pull his chute. But then, by the time he landed, he was dead. And so Utah, he can't come after Bodhi because of his knee, because it was sort of a hard landing. But then in the distance, Rosie is there with Tyler. And so he lets Tyler go and she like runs over to Utah. And then as Bodhi leaves, he says, I'll see you in the next life. As a cloud of dust billows up. And he sort of leaves. And so we cut to one place that we didn't expect to see in a Hollywood movie. Melbourne, Australia.
Australia.
Australia, specifically Torquay, mate, which is close to Geelong. Bells Beach in Torquay, which is close to Geelong. Port Phillip Bay, surfer town, and there's a gigantic storm brewing. There's a gigantic storm brewing. Oh, we're back. And so there's a huge storm blowing at the beach. Utah goes down to the beach to see if anyone's surfing, and he passes by a couple of Aussies on the way. I think one of the guys is like a Neighbours actor, probably.
It's kind of surprised how busy the beach was on a stormy, rainy day. So many people coming up the stairs, leaving the beach.
Yeah.
And no one's surfing. No one's dressed to surf.
Yeah.
What were you doing down there?
What are you doing down there? Yeah. So he sees Bodhi on the beach. Like Bodhi's like just standing there looking out in the ocean. And then Utah, this is a great moment because Utah walks up to him and then drops like the Ronald Reagan mask at his feet, which is pretty cool. And then Utah goes into the speech about he searched so many different countries for Bodhi. Like he listed all these different countries, and then eventually
it was all just cities in Mexico. Mostly, I think.
I thought there was a Southeast Asian country as well.
Was it?
City.
I don't know. I thought it was just Mexican cities.
But yeah, you get the impression that Bodhi's been around the world as he's running from the law. But then Utah's like, you know what? Eventually, Bodhi's going to make it down to Bells Beach for the 50-year storm, and he was right. And you get the impression that Bodhi doesn't want to go with him. Like he would do anything, even die in the ocean, rather than spend the rest of his life in a prison cell. So Bodhi won't go back without a fight, and so they need to fight in order to resolve things.
It's time to go. Now you got to go backwards.
Yeah, I like that bit at the end where he sort of comes up and he's like cuffed to Utah. And the way he says, no, it's like, like you can't believe that he's going to have to either, spend the rest of his life in jail or somehow die in the ocean instead. Um, and so he convinces Utah to let him just have one more surf before he gets taken out, by the cops. It's like, where am I going to go? You know, like I can't escape. But in reality, he can escape because he's going to surf, the big wave and then die in the big wave, and sort of goes out the way he wants to instead of rotting away in a jail cell. And so Utah lets him surf, and you get the line "Via con Dios." And then Utah he knows that Bodhi wasn't planning on coming back onto shore. And then Utah sort of, the Aussie cops go,
let him get away.
Why are you doing? Let him get away.
We'll get him when he comes back in.
Yeah, we'll get him when he comes back in. It's sort of, sounds very New Zealand, but and so Utah sort of symbolically throws his badge into the ocean. It's like, stuff. I don't want to be a federal agent anymore. Like, I'm done. And then that's it. The credits roll, and that's the end of the film. So a very fun trip back to the 90s, buddy cop. It's sort of the evolution of the buddy cop movie once we hit the 90s, because it's sort of, you had a lot of the buddy cop movies of the 80s that sort of spawned that genre.
It was
of
like
film.
The golden age of buddy cop movies.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of go from something like 48 Hours, which was 82 from what I recall, and then this almost 10 years later, you can see sort of the evolution of it, even though some of the tropes are the same.
When was Tango and Cash? Must have been early 90s as well. I think maybe 92 or something.
I'm going to say 87. No. Are you saying 92?
Tango and Cash? Was it 80s? Really?
Actually, I'll say 92 as well. 89. I was about to say 87.
89.
Yes, 89. I thought it was the 80s, yeah. But that's something we need to do. Kurt Russell and Sly. But yeah, there was Point Break, another excellent trip back to the 90s. Very, very fun film, highly recommended. Especially if you're a fan of, as is known these days, John Wick. And Patrick Swayze. So yeah, Keanu Reeves known more for John Wick these days than Johnny Utah, but this is where it all started in terms of the gunplay and the athleticism.
Kind of surprised that John Wick overtook Neo, like his Matrix. Like Matrix was always like his most well-known character. Now he's kind of transformed completely. He's still in the action genre.
I think it's the quality of the movies.
Yeah.
Because the Matrix films dropped off dramatically after the first film. So there was any final thoughts on Point Break?
Oh, definitely. Love watching it again. Action-packed. If you're a thrill-seeking adrenaline junkie, then this movie will definitely have you covered.
And it's funny as well, in sort of a 90s way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So check it out. Join us next time for Starship Troopers. So another 90s movie. This time, another. It's sort of another Paul Verhoeven satire.
Ooh, it's a different Johnny.
It's a different Johnny. Yeah.
Johnny Rico.
Johnny Rico. It's a very strange movie, as you'll see, because I watched it recently to take notes of it, whatever. But a very odd film in terms of the pacing and the style. Deliberately, of course. Like when you have a director like Verhoeven, everything you see on the screen is deliberate. In terms of the set design, and like just think of RoboCop. And is the satire of RoboCop, satire of what you see in Starship Troopers is sort of very similar. So we'll talk about that next week. So thank you once again, and here's a final toast to Point Break. Everyone,
Cheers.
next
See you
time.
next time. Laters.
See you next time. Cheers.
Yeah, 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 yeah.